Welcome to this session on the Power BI Administrator and Governance. Just a word of advice before we start is this is not a very technical session. This is more about the processes and people and you know what the role of the administrator is. So if you expect a lot of technical stuff, then maybe this is not what you're not going to get what you expect. But let's dive into it. So the agenda of this session is I'm going to talk about the role of the Power BI Administrator, what the main task of the administrator is. Then we're gonna switch over to talk about governance, and then what the role of the Power BI administrator is in the governance effort. What does the administrator do, and what is more of an organizational effort? Okay. So, generally speaking, very generally speaking, an administrator of a platform is responsible for the platform. So they are responsible for the legal part of the platform, for the governance of the platform, and the operation of the platform. That is, of course, not always the case for Power BI, and I will explain it a little bit later on why that it's not always fits into that. But their main task, of course, is the smooth operation. So making sure everything is working. And that your monitoring is up and running, and that of those two, of course, they are hanging together. Of course, there was a really nice introduction from Maruya on monitoring and what you can get out of it, which is fits perfectly into this. But as I said, Power BI is maybe a little bit different than many other platforms because because Power BI is not really a platform. It is just a part of a bigger platform. So that's why very often the Power BI administrator does not have the legal responsibility of the platform, but they do normally have the governance and operational. So the Power BI administrator is basically a role within the Microsoft 365. So in Microsoft 365, you can find a user, you can give him the role of a Power BI administrator. If you give a person or a user account that role, what they will get besides beside the whatever everyone else has, they will be able to see the Power BI admin portal, which has a bunch of settings in it. They can manage, I have managed within quotes the on-premise data gateway because they cannot really do it, but unless they have explicit performance access. But they can do some other things, and they can manage capacities if you are in a Power BI Premium environment. So administrating the Power, now we have to talk about what the administrator is. It's a role basically. So now we talk about the what they do. So the Power BI administrator has responsibility for tenant administration, for capacity administration, for perhaps a gateway administration. That's not really, it's not really what you get, but I will show you a little bit what it is, like a side way into that you will get, and of course monitoring. And I will go through each one of these four things here, and talk about what the Power BI administrator is responsible for and what they can do and cannot do. So first of all, the tenant administration, and this is the reason why I think normally Power BI administrator is not responsible for the legal part of it, because Power BI is basically only a subscription within a tenant. So the tenant itself is the Microsoft 365. That's the whole thing. That's a tenant, but it holds a lot of subscription, and Power BI is only one of those subscriptions. So that's why the Power BI tenant administration is not really a tenant administration. It's basically just a subset of our larger tenant settings. If you are a Microsoft 365 administrator, you will have, of course, all those rights of all the subscription and all the tenant settings of every subscription areas. But then you have those subscriptions within the tenant that some administrator for those subscriptions, they can actually impact those routines. So the Power BI admin portal is where the tenant settings are, which the Power BI administrator can change. The Power BI administrator does not have any access to the Microsoft 365 administration portal. They can open it, but they cannot really do anything in there. Now, the most important probably part of the Power BI administrator is the tenant settings, and I have a list of those here. I'm not going to read that list. There's no reason to read it. I'm just going to hop into it, and we're just going to take a little bit of a look and talk about what the most important ones are and why you should be be aware of them. The slides, of course, you will get the slides, and they have like a description of each section, and then a little bit about why it's important. But as I'm logged in here into Power BI as an administrator, and if I go to the three dots, if you're in a better resolution screen, this won't be three dots. This will actually be a menu here. I'm traveling, so I'm on a little bit of a bad resolution screen here. So if I go to the settings, I will have few different settings. One of them is admin portal. This one we're going to talk about now. The admin portal will have a few sections of things you can manage here. First of all, it will have this usage metrics, which I just want to maybe warn you a little bit about this, because this will have some numbers from how your tenant is going. But this will not always match if you do proper monitoring like Rui just showed before, this won't necessarily match it completely, because there's some kind of a mismatch between them. So I highly recommend that you don't use this for anything else than approximate, just a little bit of an overview of how it's going. If you want to really know what's going on, you need to do monitoring. Users are not something that the Power BI administrator does anything with. The only thing a Power BI administrator can do with users is basically add them to a capacity. That's really it. Otherwise than that, everything about users is in Active Directory within the Microsoft 365 tenant. So that's where all that goes. So that's why it's basically just a link to that here. Why it is here, I'm not quite sure. The most important one probably that I want to spend time on is the one called tenant settings here. So the tenant settings is where you will go in and have your subset of the tenant settings that are global for a whole Microsoft 365. There are a few sections here, and these just to be absolutely clear, these here are live. So this will change, and it has changed, and it changed regularly. So first of all, if Microsoft adds new capabilities to Power BI, they will often have settings that come with it, and those settings will be added to this year. A very recent example of this is the this is what it's called again. Sorry about this. Is the the labels, the privacy labels. Sorry, yeah, I just completely forgot. So when Microsoft added that feature to Power BI, they added the new settings that will help you to put it. So it is not enough for you as an administrator to go in here, set it to what you want, and then just leave it forever. You will need to actually take a look in here once in a while, and you won't be notified when it comes either. So there's nothing to tell you that something changes in here. You can, of course, and you should definitely go in here. If you are more than one administrator, this is really, really important. If you're only one administrator, this is less important, but still something you should be doing. You should go in here. You should look at every one of these settings here. Look at each one of them, and you should make an informed decision of what it should be. And then you should actually, in my mind, you should document it. So you should go in here and say, I should take a look at the one, create workspaces is enabled for the entire organization. Write that down. The reason why I think you should actually document what the settings are is that, especially if you're more than one administrator, if someone goes in here and changes the settings, the change will be picked up by the audit log, so that someone went in and changed this, but they will only say in the audit log what this was changed to. It won't say what this was changed from, meaning that if you can't remember, you will need to make the informed decision again. Now, of course, that's not a horrible thing to make an informed decision again, but it's just really nice just to be able to look it up into a document. And these are 30, 40 settings. It took me a couple of hours to actually create a nice document, which I just made an informed decision about each and every one of these and wrote it down. It's a lot of copy paste work, but it's really something that is worth doing. So I just want to point out to you a few things in here before we go on. that I think are important or underutilized. So first of all, the first section here is something that I really, really like, but I see very few, at least of my customers, they don't use this. So what you can do here is sort of especially the first part here is get help information. So I have put in my local SharePoint as a place where you can get help. So when users are browsing Power BI, when they're looking at the reports, when they go to here, when they go to to help and support and all that, they will be pointed to your internal sites instead of be pointing to the to the external Microsoft web. So I really think you should really try this out. Another thing you should definitely be looking at, and if you haven't not yet, so this is allow users to try Power BI paid feature. So you can turn this on and off. So basically, should a user be able to sign up for a trial? And this is really important because at the moment, the Power BI premium per user is free. And if people sign up for a trial license for that, they can use all the nice premium features. But if you are not intending on buying it for them, and you should be careful of allowing them to get used to it all, and then you take it away from them when they're done. So just make sure that you want this to be on, but you cannot say that you only want to have people to be allowed to sign up for Pro but not for Premium. There's no way to distinguish between those two. The next section I want to point out to you is the export and sharing settings, and this is particularly if you have if you have already set this. This changed a couple of months ago. This whole section here changed dramatically. So now it's much more granular to what you can and cannot do here. So before you had export to Excel, and if you had that unchecked, all kind of other features didn't work. But now Power BI has actually split this up into a bunch of different things, so that you have much more granular control over it. Probably would like to have more granular control, but that's of course we understand that this is a big deal. But if you haven't gone and looked at this in the last couple of months, you should definitely go in and make sure that this is set to whatever you want the export and share setting, because this is really, really, really important and can it can influence a lot of how your users are using Power BI, both in in a good way and a bad way. So these are all kind of other settings here are really important, of course, but these are the ones that I want to point out to you right now. As I said, you should definitely go in and you should go and go through each one of the settings and make an informed decision. Don't count on Microsoft having a default value that fits to whatever your organization wants. So be sure to do that. Just to what Rui he talked about before, that creating a service principal there, you can put them in here if you want to have a service principal that can read the Power BI admin APIs. That is the best practice, as he said. And there's also one over here which you can use as well. Okay, so I don't want to spend more time on the tenant settings. We don't have a lot of times, but this is where you will spend a lot of your time. You don't spend a lot of time, but this is where you need to be really on it, and you need to be aware of what is And as I said, because things change here regularly, and there's nothing to let you know that things change regularly, I would recommend that you maybe a monthly or something like that. You will review this with your documentation that you had done already. You just go through the documentation and compare it to whatever is settings are here, and then in that way you will notice if new things pop up, or if if something has changed in between. But another way to monitor changes in here of the already existing things is to monitor the audit log, because it will, as I said, tell you that something changed if someone goes in and changes it. Okay, so that was this is the tenant settings, and this is where your where the main responsibility of the administrator is. There are, of course, a lot of other things in here that you should be looking at, and you can look at, but this is the more important. There are a couple of others. Are just settings here, groups of settings that I just want to point out to you. One is the embed codes, and of course, if you have published to web, they will come here. If you have not turned off published to web, you might want to consider that. If you have turned it off, you don't really have to think about it. This will all be inactive if there is any embed codes. If you have it on, you will do well in monitoring this occasionally, just to take a look at if someone is sharing something to web that you maybe don't think they should be sharing. So this is something you should be monitoring. Organizational visual is another one which I really like. If your organization doesn't want to allow every single third-party visuals, you can put up a store of organizational visuals that will keep them into a in a certain version, and will allow you to and there's a tenant settings that will allow you to limit the use of organizational visuals, of custom visuals, to only those that are in the store. Note that you as an administrator, you will not be able to tell people what they use on their in Power BI Desktop. So they can add whatever third-party or whatever custom visual they want into Power BI Desktop. If they then publish it to the service, it will just not work there. It's not a perfect solution. If you want to control it, really control it, what visuals people use, there is a group policy you can set and send out to all the machines on your network. Of course, not you, a Windows administrator can do that. They can send a group policy out, which will actually limit, if you can use custom visuals or not. It's on and off as far as I know. So it's not. It does not help you, if you have certain visuals that you want to allow, but others you don't want to allow. But if you want to control it completely, you can use a group policy that you send out to all the machines in your network. The next one I want to highlight is the workspaces, and the reason why I want to highlight it here is that as you as an administrator will not have access to workspaces unless you have given explicit access to them. But you can, as an administrator, for all modern workspaces, that is, not the Office 365 groups, the old type of workspaces, but for all the new workspaces, you can actually go into this list here and you can add yourself or someone else to the workspace. So you can go here and you can say, you can control the access, meaning that, if you need to support someone, you will be able to add yourself to the workspace. But you won't see the workspace unless you do this. So it's not like you automatically add it to all workspaces. This is just something that you can do if you need to support someone. Of course, a lot of these things that I'm talking about here can also be done via the REST API, but it's not not all of it. This, for example, can be done via the REST API. And the last thing I want to talk about is the featured content. This is a very underused feature, which I really like personally. It's basically where you can allow, within the tenant settings, you can allow users to publish featured content. And if people have done that, they will show up here, the featured content, and you can then manage it if you want to take it away or whatever. And what is featured content? It's basically where you can inject something into people's the home here or the dashboards, where you can highlight something new or something exciting. So this can be really good if you are if you're doing an organizational report, something really nice that you want to just highlight to people that now we are finished with this really nice report. You can make it featured, meaning that people will hopefully notice it if they use the home tab of it. So not everyone will use it, but some people will, and they might see this really nice feature there. Okay. As I said, I have a list there of the all the different sections, and I have tried to describe them a little bit of what they are, and you can just read over this if you want to do that. So just to recap a little bit, make an informed decision on all the settings, document it, and monitor it. And I have put some of the important settings in there again. So if you have Power BI Premium, you as an administrator will be able to do some things, but you won't be able to do other things. And this is for Gen 1. So Microsoft has recently introduced Generation 2 of capacities, which will have a little slightly different settings. So you're not going to be able to do exactly the same things within. The reason why that is because in Gen 1, the one we are talking about now, you buy a certain amount of hardware, so CPUs and memory. While in the Gen 2, you will only be buying memory, and that memory will be per data set, while in the Gen 1, it's that memory and CPU you buy are what you have, that's it. So it's a little bit different how they work, but at the moment, Gen 2 is in preview, so there's no, so I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm just gonna stick to Gen 1 as as you have it now. So buying capacities, if you are buying premium capacities, they are not done by the Power BI administrator. That's done in Microsoft 365. If you're buying embedding capacities, you can do that in Azure. And then you have, as an administrator, you can actually do that. But if we're talking about just Power BI Premium, it's not done there. The same thing about resizing it and setting the region for capacities. That's not done by the administrator. That's done by the Microsoft 365 admin within the Microsoft 365 tenants. But what the administrator can do is user assignments. So basically, they can tell which users should be able to assign workspaces to capacity. They can change the workload settings. So basically, how big part of the premium should go to data flows or should go to AI and so on and so forth. They can restart the capacity, meaning that they can go in and restart it. And this is, of course, very typically because you have a server. I know this is not really a hardware server you have, but sometimes it needs to be restarted. It depends a lot. I have, the customers I have that have premium have never had to restart it, but I have heard of instances where you need to restart the capacity, and then you can, as a Power BI administrator, you can do that. You can also assign capacities if you don't want. You can assign users to assign capacities, or you can assign capacities yourself. But just be aware of this little gotcha within the Power BI Premium and capacities, that if you are using Excel workbooks, push datasets, streaming datasets, or QA, those will not be stored within your capacity. They will always be stored in a shared capacity. Now, this is really, usually not a big problem, but it can be a huge problem if you are, if you're using, assigning your capacity also to a certain region because you really want the data to stay within the region. So let's say that you have, operations all around the world, and you have capacity in the US, and you have capacity in Europe, and you have capacities in Africa or whatever you want, and you want the data to stay within those. But maybe your shared capacity or your initial tenant is in the US. Let's just say that. If you have a capacity in Europe, if someone publishes Excel workbook to that, it's going to be stored in the US tenant because it's going to stored in the US tenant because it's going to be stored in the shared capacity, which is originally maybe in the US. So just be aware of these things if you are a Power BI administrator, that you could get into trouble if it is a very strict requirement that you store everything within a certain region. Now, of course, there is the new kid on the block, which is premium per user, and there are it's of course in preview still, but there are a couple of settings you can do with premium per users. So you can do a lot less with it than you can do with proper premium, because premium per user, of course, is on a shared capacity, even though you have premium features. So you have this auto refresh setting here, and you have do you want to allow XMLA endpoints to read and write? So that's really what you can do. As I said, if you have a proper premium, you will be able to do have sign capacities and do workloads and all kind of different things that you can do with premium that you cannot do with premium per user. So this is what you get there. But again, this is something that you should probably take a look at, especially if you want to look at some of these nice cool features with an XMLA endpoints. If you just want to try them out, premium per user is free at the moment and will allow you to do that. So that's a really good way to get started there if you don't want to go full in for Power BI Premium. So I'm gonna talk about governance next, but before I do it, I just want to know there was one strange thing that happened to me the other day, which I really thought was interesting. So basically, if you are a Power BI administrator, you might or you might not have access to a gateway. So if I go to manage gateways here, so here I'm in the as a Power BI administrator, I go to manage gateways and it says you don't have any gateways. I know I have gateways, but even though I'm an administrator, I don't have access to the gateway unless I have been given explicit access to the gateway. So I cannot manage the gateway without having, an administrator rights on the gateway given explicitly to me. Unless, unless you go to the Power Platform administrator portal. There you can do some things with the gateway, which I really don't understand. But this is just something just to, it's really important to know of this, even though it's not gonna. Sorry, I'm gonna go here. Even though it's probably not gonna do anything for your organization, just be aware of that. So here I am a same user logged into the Power Platform Admin Center, and I see that there are gateways here. Go away, sorry. I cannot do anything Power BI with them here, but I can actually assign users to the gateway. So the gateway will work for them within the Power Platform, not within the Power BI. So it's a really weird one that you can administrate the gateways within the Power Platform as a Power BI administrator, but you cannot administrate it within the Power BI. You just need to be aware of that. This is what it is, and I think. I would be my assumption, even though I have no idea about it, that in the future, of course, this will somehow merge, that you will have a Power Platform Admin Center that will have everything, not just not just some things, and then the other things is going to be in the separate tool admin centers. But that's just a guess on my part. So what is really cool thing about this Power Platform Admin Center, besides that you'll be able to see the gateways that you didn't know exist, is that you will actually see all the gateways that exist in your organization. You will also see the personal gateways that exist, and you can go on and you can take them down. You can make sure that people cannot. So there's a managed gateway installer here, so you can say, okay, people are not allowed to install personal gateways on this tenant. So you can do all kind of cool things in here that you cannot do within the Power BI admin center. And you as a Power Platform, as a Power BI admin, you will be able to do things in here that you didn't know you could do, of course. Okay, so that was just a little out of the way about the Power Platform and the gateway. So the next thing I wanna switch a little bit. So I've talked about what the Power BI administrator does, what the role of the administrator is, what they can and cannot do, and now I want to just switch focus a little bit over to governance and take up what is the role of the Power BI administrator in that. I want to just take a couple of minutes to go through my take on Power BI governance. There, of course, there's nothing really to say that this is the right one or the wrong one. This is just what I see as a good Power BI governance strategy. In my world, the good Power BI governance strategy rests on 4 pillars. You have processes, which are basically the backbone of a good strategy, because they will tell people how to do things correctly. Training, both in the governance and also in the tool, because if you have well-trained people, they will most likely, at least not on accidentally breach governance. You have monitoring, which of course probably is one of the main pillar of governance, because you need to know what's going on if you want to make sure that your governance strategy holds or not. And then roles, which is probably one of the pillars that are much less used than the others, because a lot of people do them, but I think they're really important. And I'm going to go through each one of these and talk about why I think they're important and what you should be thinking about. So first one is the processes, and this is something that I see many organizations lack, and this is I think it's really because people don't feel like you need processes in a self-service environment, and in my mind that couldn't be farther from the truth, because in self-service environment you will still need processes. It doesn't have to be like a long big SAP standard process. This doesn't have to be like an SOP that is from some huge environment. It just needs to be a document that helps people do things correctly. And in my experience, self-service users and business developers of Power BI, they're actually quite happy to get some kind of a document that describes not in big details, but in some broader terms what to do. And if a process has a bad name in your organization, call them best practices or call them something completely different. but if you have them, you can help people get right off from the start. So I normally have recommend that you have at least 3 different processes, but they can be broken up into many different parts. So development process is one. This is where I recommend that you tell people where that they should be doing development in Power BI Desktop. They should be storing their Power BI Desktop files in some good place. It should be in a version control or in just some other place that you want them to store it safely. Just those broader terms of that. Publishing and sharing is usually in one, but it depends a little bit on how your organization is set up. How do you create workspaces? Or if you're not allowed to create workspaces, what is the process of having one created for you? How should you share? Should you use apps all the time, or are you allowed to do direct sharing? All these different things. Security process. How do you assign people to the workspace, and what do the different roles mean? Naming standards. Unfortunately, I have never seen an organization do that properly, but probably there is out there someone who is not just my customer. But having a naming standard will help you greatly. But normally these things are thought of afterwards, because everyone starts using Power BI, and then people start thinking about governance later on. So it can be hard to enforce naming standard afterwards. Now, support is a process where it's basically a guidance to your support organization, if you have one, of what to do if someone puts in a ticket for Power BI. What I sometimes see, which is a really bad thing, is that people submit tickets for Power BI and nobody knows what to do with them, and they just die in the support system. Maybe the guidance to the support team people is just send it on to whoever is owner of the workspace, and then that's it. And the tenant setting I talked about before, where you have actually documented the tenant settings. Training is also really, really important, and what in my opinion, so if you want to prevent people from doing things wrongly or badly, training is really the only answer. You can write, documents that will help them, but training them will help much more. And I think, training everyone would be a good idea. So not just the developers; they of course are the big part of it if you're thinking governance, but also the end users. And the end user training doesn't have to be a course. It can just be some videos on your internal SharePoint site or something, where they can look at the videos and learn how do I do use slicers, how do I use the filter pane, how do I export to Excel? I know everyone wants to do that anyway, and all these different things. How do I navigate the portal? So help people do things correctly will help you be in compliance with your governance strategy. What I really like to, what I've been doing lately is something that I really like, is to automate some of these things. So monitor the audit log for when someone first publishes a Power BI Desktop, publishes a Power BI report. Pick that up from the audit log and automatically send them documentation and maybe training offering or something like that. When someone gets a license in Office 365 for a Power BI Pro license or Power BI Premium license, premium user that is, send them some documentation, send them some information, just automatically get them up to speed without having to reach out to each and every one of them manually. So that's something that I have been doing lately, and I think it's giving a lot of value for very little effort. Now, roles, as I said, is something that I think is overlooked in a lot of places. What are my main reason for including it here, what I really like you to take back with you, is that if you are running a Power BI environment, you might have different roles within it. These are just examples. The Power BI administrator, of course, that's why you are looking at this. There might be a gateway administrator, which is another person perhaps, or the same person, or it might be some infrastructure team or whatever. It could be an auditor, supporter. It could be all kind of different roles you have within Power BI. But my main thing is that a lot of these people that have these roles are doing it beside their day-to-day job. So the Power BI administrator is really often like an accidental administrator. It's a person that was just best in Power BI, or the first one to use Power BI, or something like that. And if you don't recognize these roles as real roles, those people will not have time to actually fulfill them properly. If you put the hat on those people, they will much more likely, and preferably you allocate some time to this. They will much more likely be able to do this role properly. So if you're a Power BI administrator, have your organization acknowledge that this is actually a role that requires a little bit of time. It's not a full-time role, but it does require some time. And if you want to take the responsibility, you should actually have the recognition and the allocation for it as well. Now, as I said, the really big part of Power BI governance is the monitoring. And from our standpoint, what we are looking at today, what we're talking about today, this is really the only part of a Power BI governance that is on the responsibility of the administrator, because this is the only technical part of the governance. The rest of it is simply documentation and training and assigning roles and all these different things. This is a technical thing because doing monitoring is something you need to do, technically. And as I said, it's a big part of governance. I don't want to go into the details because Rui has already mentioned a lot of this. Using the REST API to get the artifact inventory, using the audit log either from Office 365 if you have access, or from Power BI REST API if you're just a Power BI administrator. Get those data out. And what I really like, if you want to do this, is to mash it all together, because as you saw with Rui's session, is that if you saw it just before this one here, is that if you take data about your inventory of artifacts and your auditing data and put it together, you will much more be able to see, how is my inventory trending, and also what is being used and what is not being used, and all these different things work really well together. So you will be able to help people on governance issues, but also on adoption and all these different things. And of course, report on the results, which is, if you didn't see the session before mine, this is what it was about, reporting on everything that comes out of it, because it's really important. So first of all, of course, it's most important is to gather the data, because it will disappear. So if you want to, if you're in an audit situation at some point, you want to have the data at least so you can answer the question. But if you want to do the other parts of this, so like adoption or all these different things that you can do with the data, then you need to report on it. So one of my favorite things to do with this data is to actually create a artifact inventory report, because what happens is that if you don't have explicit access to a workspace or a report, you don't know it exists. So if you're an organization that doesn't even have to be large, a person might not know that a report they are creating actually exists beforehand. So then you might create it again, and so you have duplicate effort, but just type aside that nobody knows about each other. And then you have the third person who might create the same report again. If you create a report on top of the artifact inventory, just displaying these are all the reports that we have in our organization. They are sectioned by these workspaces or by these departments. If you have information about the authors as well, if you've gotten the information from the Active Directory, you might have departments and everything. And then you can click here if you want to apply for access. So I've created this a few times, and this is really good for adoption, because you will let people know what exists and what doesn't exist. So I don't know, and I'll go a lot through it. Just Power BI inventory is what exists, what changed, what workspaces you have. So you want to list everything you have, but when you take it out of the REST API, you fetch all the workspaces, you will just get a point-in-time information. So fetching it all day will allow you to do what has changed over time as well. And of course, the activities which are most important for a governance perspective and for the operation of the tenant, or the operation of the subscription. For the administrator, this is where the important data lies. I try to do it in this way. I try to use cloud solutions to get it. This is just of an architecture of what I try to do, but there's all kind of ways to do it. Technically, you need to think about how do you want to get it out? Do you want to use PowerShell? Do you want to use your custom web application? All these different things, and then you will have whatever your environment offers. My main thing here is that collect the data, put it into a storage somewhere where you can then use it for monitoring. As an administrator, it's important, and you are responsible for being able to answering questions about what happened at this particular time. who accessed this report here, and all these different things that might come up in a relationship with the governance in an audit or something like that. You are responsible for answering those questions. So make sure this is working and this is running, so you're not reliant on only having the last 30 days of data or last 90 days of data if you are have access to the Office 365. So that was what I wanted to tell you about the Power BI Administrator and the governance and the what the administrator should do in the governance effort. Your feedback is really, really important to us, both the organizers and myself. So if you're willing to spend a little time on doing the feedback, we'll be really happy. I will be here to answer questions if there are any, and I also have a slide after this which has my contact information. If you want to get in touch, please do, and I love to talk about the data. But I'm just gonna see if there's any questions before we go on. So I'm just opening the Q&A. Let me see, are there any questions? No, there's no. Yep. So okay, there was a question actually that was asked during the RUI session, but I think I can answer it because it's it's a question that is a little bit about what we're doing here. So the question was, can we get these details by the audit log? Searching for the Power BI activities, perhaps. So it's basically asking if is it the same to use the Office 365 admin panel and the Power BI REST API to get the audit data out. And yes, the same events are in both. So basically, the Power BI REST API does have subset of the Office 365 audit logs. And the reason why it's subset is because in the Office 365 audit logs, you will have all the audit logs of all the Office 365, and there's no way to segregate them. So you will have SharePoint logs, you will have file logs, you will exchange logs, everything in one go. And if you get it through the Power BI REST API, you will only going to be getting the Power BI audit log. So that's really the difference. So I know I'm done with the time, but I'm just gonna if it's okay, I know you have 15 minutes between. Just want to spend 2 minutes here answering the question. So basically, the audit log in Office 365 has everything, just everything, while the Power BI REST API will only have whatever is underneath the Power BI activities. But otherwise, it's exactly the same event. And the reason, and this will it will store default 90 days, while the REST API in Power BI will only take the last 30 days. Just so you're aware of that. Well, that was just wanted to say that. So here are my contact information. I have recently, just sort of shameless plug here, I have recently published a book together with Michael Johnson from South Africa. It's called Pro Power BI Administration. It's from A-Press. It's a book about basically administrating and governance of your Power BI, of your Power BI environment. It is not meant to be a technically click here, do that. It's more of the process and people and what you should and shouldn't do. So it shouldn't be outdated very soon. So it's something you can fetch from Amazon or from Power BI, from A-Press site, itself. But otherwise than that, thank you very much. If you have any questions, fire them away, and I will try to be here and answer them if they don't. Okay, there's one more question. If you remember correctly, there was a difference between Power BI Gateway and the Power Platform Gateway. Has anything changed? I couldn't quite understand why you could see gateways in the Power Platform admin and not in the Power BI panel. So the gateways are the same. So you can install one gateway and it works on both the Power Platform. So it will work on Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. So it's basically you can use the same gateway across. You don't have to do that. So there's really no difference between them there. So these gateways that I showed you in the Power Platform audit, there's Power Platform Admin Center. These are gateways that I installed, enterprise gateways that I installed for Power BI. They were not installed for anything in Power Platform, but they will work for Power Platform as well. So there is really no difference. The great thing about it is that here you can actually see all of them. Although if you will install a gateway within the Power Apps, for example, it won't necessarily show up in Power BI. I'm not, I think you will actually need to get a permission to see it there. So that's why you don't see it. But otherwise, it can be used across. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, if there's no more question, I think we will have a break now, and I can think maybe you want to put up the slide that will go in between sessions.